This is going to be the first video in a number of videos on how to make a Batpod. So this one I've been making for the last 7 years, and I've finally finished it, and I've decided I'm going to build another one. So where we're going to start is inside the front wheel. See the disc brake in there? The disc is actually mounted to a plate that bolts onto the back of the wheel hub. So the first thing we're going to make is that adapter plate which bolts onto the back of the wheel hub, and then there's a couple of metal standoffs, and then the disc bolts onto it. So there's got to be enough room between the disc and the wheel hub so that the brake caliper doesn't actually touch the wheel or the wheel hub as it actually hangs over the top of the disc. So first part we're going to do is try out the plasma cutter. This will be the first part I'm going to cut for the new bike, and we'll get that done shortly. So this is a model of the first bike that I built, and this is the part we'll be looking at today. So it's the spacer. It sits just here. It sits between the wheel hub and the disc, and you can see what I mean. So it has to provide enough space so the actual brake caliper here doesn't crash into the back of the wheel when you mount the wheel on here. And it's a 22mm disc, reason being that when the wheels are on, you need to have enough clearance inside there for the disc caliper to clear everything inside the wheel. So I did start with a 25mm at one point and decided that my caliper was then going to crash to the top of the wheel, so I switched to a 22mm disc. So it all depends on your caliper, I guess, as to what size disc you actually purchase. But yeah, I've gone with the 22. This is the attachment bracket on the computer here. So if I zip over to simulate the cut, I've asked it to cut the inner ring first. Then I asked it to cut the red circles and then the black circles, just for no particular reason. I could have done any order there, but that's just the way I've chosen. And then the outer ring. So if I simulate that, it'll simulate how the torch cuts. So in a bit, does each of the little ones, does the other ring, and then the outer ring. Now I've set it to cutting at 800mm per second. That seems to be about right. I could have done the transfer passes a bit quicker, but I'm not in a rush, so I just sort of let it cut. So that's the cutting path that the machine will be doing. Taking the bracket adapter to hold the front disc for the Batpod number 2. Plasma cutter's turned on, ready to go. Compressed air's ready. Earth is connected. I haven't used this very often, so let's see how we do. Okay, G-code, so we're going to cut this shape here. It's a circle with a few other holes in it. Let's see how we go. part here, there's a bit of dross on the bottom, pretty easy to clean up I think. We'll get some measurements to see if the part has come out to the right dimensions. Everything looks pretty clean, the circles look pretty good. Alright, let's clean it up and see how it looks. Okay, so here's the wheel hub, the part cleaned up, so it fits over there, and where it will actually fit is on the back of the wheel. So if we flip this over, we'll push out all the bolts there, and it'll sit there through those holes. I'll have a little standoff coming out of each of these ones, and a disc will be mounted on the back. So here's the front disc, so it's a 22mm disc. Those holes should line up there. There we go. And I'll just get some metal standoffs, and we'll put bolts on this side, and the standoffs will actually be welded to that back plate, which is then held to the wheel hub by the bolts being pushed in through there. And then your brake caliper will obviously sit here, so it doesn't it sits behind the front wheel, so it's got to sit off about there, I guess, so as it doesn't hit the wheel when the actual brake caliper is over the disc. Here I'm just removing the bolts from the wheel hub, so I've already taken 4 out, so it's just a matter of basically leaving your wheel nut on, put a block of metal on top, give it a few hits with the hammer just to break the seal, and once it's off I use the vise to press it out. So essentially you've got to put something over the back of it, so I just use a socket there, put it over the back of the bolt, and put it in the vise, pretty much like that. Just clamp the vise together, and then it slowly presses out the bolt. So once we've got all the bolts out, then we can look at mounting the disc adapter onto the back once it's prepared. So here I've removed all the bolts out of the wheel hub. I've got the disc sitting on top of the hub, and the brake caliper. I've purchased a couple of those just from AliExpress. So what we need to do now is make the standoffs to go between the disc adapter and the disc, so that the brake caliper doesn't actually protrude past the front of the wheel hub. So if you look at it there, it's sitting down in front of the wheel hub. So we just need to make sure that it sits behind that, taking into account the thickness of this. So as long as it doesn't pass the front of that, we should be fine. I'll just get some measurements. So if we take a look at the disc distance from that caliper there to the front of the hub, looks like it's about 22mm, I'd say, if you take into account the thickness of the actual hub itself, which is about 10mm. We could probably just make 15mm standoffs, and it should be sitting behind the wheel hub and not getting in the way of anything. So I'll turn up 4 or 5 of them on the lathe, and we'll go from there.